Welcome and good evening to Insights on Leadership in Life. I'm your host, Roberta Pickett, Leadership and Life Coach and author of the book, Hot, Sweaty, and Happy, Lessons Learned Along the Trail. So you can ask more about that later if you're interested.
Piqued my interest.
I bet it did.
Yeah.
So tonight we have an exciting show planned about community and legacy. And we have two perfect guests to talk about those topics. And that is our Mayor of Jackson, Pat Crew. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you for having me.
And the CEO of the Jackson Rancheria, Rich Hoffman.
Thank you.
Welcome, Rich. So I bet you guys are wondering, though, what makes them the perfect people to talk about community and legacy. And so we're going to take this first segment to really find out a little bit about their background. So, Pat, let's start with you.
All right.
We want the 4-minute version of your life.
4-minute version?
Yeah.
4-minute version is my family came here as hard rock miners.
Oh.
And in the early 1919.
And here being Jackson?
Yeah. My mother was born and raised here. My father came after the war. Him and his brothers had a portable sawmill that they traveled around with. So I come from a blue-collar background, and that has always influenced my life. And my kids went to the same grammar school that I went to. My kids went to the same high school that I went to. And all of that really pleases me. Mm. And I had my own business for 38 years, Jackson Tire, shameless plug. But we've kept that. It's a family-owned business. It's kept on. So if there's a common theme for me, it would be family is the most important. And here I am today. When I retired, I decided to try out politics, and I became involved in a couple of foundations, which we'll go over later. So yeah. I'm probably busier now than I was when I worked.
Oh, that's great.
But I'm doing it because I want to. Instead of a slave to the clock, and have to. So.
Well, I always see a smile on your face,
yeah.
So that says
right.
something about it.
I just love Amador County and the people and the weather, and I always have a smile on my face.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's me.
Well, again, welcome, and so glad that you can join us tonight, because there are a lot of questions I have for you about community and so many things going on, not just here in Jackson, but across the county. So looking forward to talking about that. And Mr. Rich Hoffman, so CEO of the largest employer in the large county of Amador.
Yeah, well, it's a great county. And like Pat, I grew up here. I grew up in Volcano.
Oh.
A lot of people don't know that.
No.
I went to Pine Grove and Pioneer Elementary School. I guess they called it senior elementary school back then. The 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We used to sit on the side of the hill and watch the cattle drives in the spring and fall as they move the cattle from the high country down to the low country.
Did they come through Volcano?
No, they block off Highway 88.
Oh, coming through.
And we'd sit on the side of the hill there at Pioneer School and watch the whole string of cattle move through. So went to Amador High School, was involved in agriculture, and was president of the Future Farmers of America, Pat, back at Amador.
Good group.
Studied parliamentary procedure, competed in the FFA in parliamentary procedure. Nice job with Robert's Rules. I was at a city council meeting the other night, and Pat is a master of running a meeting.
So I'll have to ask you guys the difference between Rosenberg's and Robert's.
Well, it'll take another hour.
Yeah, you've only got a 1-hour show.
So after high school, I went down to Fresno State, and then came back and worked here and there. Worked out in the woods for a while. Did some work in agriculture, and I convinced Jim Giddy to give me a job at the radio station as the weekend disc jockey, and I was working at P&M Cedar Products during the week and working there on the weekends. And I remember my old friend Jim Giannini, who lived my kind of adopted grandpa down in Volcano, telling him that I was really considering getting into radio and advertising, but at the time I was running the edger up at the cedar mill, and he looked at me like my hair was on
Got
fire.
rocks in
You're
your
crazy.
head.
That's the best you're going to do is be an edgerman up at P&M Cedar Products, and you're crazy to mess around with that.
Right.
But I continued in with media and broadcast and newspaper, and spent the early part of my career in advertising. And then in '96, the bingo hall at Jackson Rancheria was a customer of mine. I was working for McClatchy at the time, the Sacramento Bee,
Yep.
and they'd fired their advertising agency and were interested in taking that in-house. So I kind of threw my hat in the ring to be a media buyer, and that was '96, and I just never left. So one thing
How
led to another. Went
interesting.
through the marketing, and then
Yeah.
became vice president of marketing, and then Margaret, who I learned a great deal from, tapped me to come over to the tribal office and become the CEO of the enterprise, the tribal enterprises other than the casino and the casino. And that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. Yeah.
It's so interesting to hear people's stories because you never know how it's going to proceed. I always told my kids growing up, there is more than one pathway to success.
Absolutely.
Just because you don't have, a Harvard degree or whatever doesn't mean you're not going to be successful. You have to find your way through the
Yep.
path, through the trails of life, really,
Squeezed
to figure out what
a
works
lot out
for
of being
you.
a bulldog. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
But like your old friend said, that's all you're ever going to be. There was, some people don't.
And people, people from his generation,
That
all
was
take
more
risks.
common,
Yeah.
They
And that
did
was
not
it.
take risks.
that was just secure. You go to work for a mill, and you got a good position there. It's a good union job. That was it. That was your life right there. You're
But
set.
of course, then
Yeah.
too, things were perhaps a little bit more settled. You were expected to stay in a job for 30, 40 years, and it was
Well,
still
that's
going to
what-
be there, right?
That's what happened, Roberta. I remember out of high school, if one of our guys in our high school class got a job with PG&E, we would have said, well, he's set for life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way
Yeah.
we looked at it. I
Yeah.
told my father, in fact, he loaned me $10,000 to start my business. And he says, you're going to build a business outside of town.
Question mark?
Yeah, and you're going to open the door and hope somebody shows up, a lot like your adopted. He go, you got rocks in your head, kid. But he had faith in me.
Yeah. He still lent you the money
Yeah.
to get started.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. And
And-
30 years later, still going.
Town just came
40
your way.
now.
40.
Town just
Yeah,
came your way.
Right. We were out at the end of town.
Yeah.
Our friend Dan Pakalovich told my original partner, Larry Blanken, you'll never make it. You're too far out of town. Because the old tire shops were right on Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
Vic Copland, who helped us quite a bit, you could bring your pickup in the morning. They would pull the wheels and tires off, retread your tires, put them back on and let them cool, and you could drive out the other door at 5 o'clock at night. That's how much the tire business has changed.
Well, a lot has changed, right? I know my parents moved to Amador County in the 80s. My mom and dad, well, we owned property since the 60s here in Amador County, but they built a home in Volcano in the 80s. And, I feel like, even though I've only lived here 5 years, I feel more like this is my home than really almost any place I've ever been. And there's just something about Amador County, and maybe it's just being in a smaller community, but I think it's really a powerful, we have a really powerful community going on. There are so many things happening. People say, aren't you bored up there out in the boonies? I said, bored? There is so much you can do, whether it's from a service club to foundations to activities. There's so much happening. I said, it's really, if you want to be involved, you're never going to be bored.
I've never been bored a single second of my life. Yeah.
No.
So that's, part of what I want to talk more about and find out more about our community and what's going on, and also about just the concept of community in general as we go forward. And so I also want to find out about what makes people get involved in all of this.
Well, you already
what
said it.
drives? Well, what?
You feel wanted and part of the community.
That's definitely part of it. So we're going to come back and talk more about it, but first we'll have a short commercial break, as you know how that works. And we will be right back in a few minutes to talk more about insights on leadership and life. Welcome back to Insights on Leadership in Life. I am your host, Roberta Pickett, and I have here with me this evening two gentlemen to talk about community and legacy. Pat Crew, our mayor of Jackson, and Rich Hoffman, the CEO of the Jackson Rancheria. So the second segment, we're going to talk, I'm going to focus on you for now, Pat.
Okay, that's fine.
And ask a few questions just to get more into more specifics about it. So,
Okay.
First of all, something I've always wanted to know. What does a mayor do?
The mayor is one of the city councilmen,
Okay.
and he has
Okay.
a vote, just the same as there's 5 city councilmen in the city of Jackson. And the council at the last meeting in December votes for the mayor for the coming year. It's a 1-year term, voted on by the council.
Oh, okay.
And the mayor's main jobs are to sign the checks. The city manager and the mayor signs the checks. And as Rich pointed to, run the meetings in an orderly fashion.
Okay. And put the face in the city as well?
And be well, yeah. You
Yeah.
know, and that's the easy part. Go now, you want to talk about Jackson?
Yeah.
How much time you got?
I know you were on earlier today to
Yeah.
talk about that, but so we have a pretty high rate of unemployment here in the county, and I presume within Jackson as well.
And high vacancy on
And-
Main
yeah.
Street, yeah.
So what are the community needs as you see them here, both within the city and then outside the city limits more in the county? Do you have a sense of what the biggest needs are?
Well, my view of it, and this is just my personal view,
That's fine.
is that Jackson has kind of come out of the shell that we have embraced tourism instead of resisted it. The Vista Point, the wheels. I envision
The tourist
people,
center.
the people could pull up at the Vista Point, look at the reliefs and all of that with their family, then come and do the walking tour of Jackson, tour the National Hotel, go to the museum if it happened to be on a weekend, the cemetery tour, finish up at the back at the Wheels or the Kennedy Mine. You could spend a day in Jackson for a family of 4 and not cost you a dime. That has got to make a difference, in my view, long term, to solve the vacancies on Main Street, because the sales tax is
Bring people-
growing.
Yeah.
So people will be attracted to that. And that should help with the unemployment because they need people. So I may be looking at it completely from the wagon instead of the horse.
But that's good because, in fact, that was actually one of the questions that I was going to ask later, but what could we do as a community to help build more of a robust economy? So one way is through tourism.
Correct.
Through having things that are both some inexpensive options.
People love history.
They do, absolutely.
Right. So if we can promote that and it's free,
Yeah. All
and the
better.
things that we have done are really first class, that Wheels development and the Vista Point.
Are we seeing some changes yet in
Not
the
to
numbers?
mention what the Rancheria did at Dieter Park.
Oh, it's
I mean, that's
so
unbelievable.
Beautiful.
We have
Oh,
the nicest park for 50 miles.
Yeah, it's beautiful job.
Yeah.
So, So yeah, tourism is definitely
I think it's lifeblood for us
yeah.
going forward.
And we have the perfect, as you said, people love history, and we have a historical community.
And then
So
if
to
you go
take advantage of
countywide, you
that,
have
yeah.
the caves, you have
Yes.
the town of Volcano, just, all of those things. I'm going drawing a little bit of a blank, but there's all kinds of,
Well, and
Sutter Creek
Sutter
is
Creek
the
and-
little,
and Amador City, and yeah.
Yeah, so there were many years that we kind of fought tourism.
Resisted
At least,
it?
resisted it. And I have talked about one of the projects that I think would tie it all together
What's that?
is the envision of a creek walk from Boozy parking lot. There is in the works. It's preliminary, but we're going where you would have a walking path
I'll go.
down to the north creek of the Jackson Creek, and the Pitt Street Bridge
Yeah.
is going to be replaced, and there's talk of using that bridge and make it a walking bridge over the North Fork of Jackson Creek, and then you would walk up past #1 Main Street and the National and turn onto Main Street and not have to use the crosswalks on 4988, which are very dangerous.
And I
So
think
it's a
that would be
safety issue, it's a
very
tourism.
Popular, very popular.
Yeah, I think that if we can get that done, that's one of my missions, to get that going.
That's great. Well, what drives you to be so involved in the community?
I knew you were going to ask me that, and I think of when I was at the Historical Society dinner when they were trying to raise the money to reopen the museum. And I told them I can remember when I was a little guy, I would go with my dad and we'd stop at the Western Auto and see Bill Gresham. Then we'd walk up the street and we'd go to Jackson Cleaners. We'd go across the street and see Sophie and get a sundae. We'd stop and see Bill Tam.
So you knew everybody.
Right. The Nedjel Vukovic. Then we might walk up and go to the museum and see Georgia Fox because she was friends of ours. It took us all day to buy 4 spark plugs. Well, I want to do that with my grandchildren. And now that the National's open, we can stop and get some Rocky Road ice cream. We can go on the walking tour. We are on our way.
And what a treasure the National is. For anybody who hasn't been there, oh my goodness, it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. Yeah, really
So
great.
that's what drives me to do it.
So what benefits do you gain from your involvement?
When I sit down at night, it makes me smile.
How many
we
you
think
said
we made a
grandkids.
difference.
How many
Only
grandkids
have
do-
2.
Oh, only
But if you met them, you'd know why. That's plenty.
full of energy, huh?
Yes, they are.
Yeah, that's great.
But they love Jackson, and they live in Sacramento,
Uh-huh.
but I could see that long term they may. They love coming to Jackson.
Love
course.
coming to see Grandpa.
I don't spoil them, but
No, I'm sure you
Grandma
don't.
does.
Yeah. What did you have a favorite teacher growing up?
I did.
What subject?
PE,
PE.
which was my favorite subject. Irv Glandon,
What did you learn from him?
discipline,
And
responsibility.
Yeah.
He was the basketball coach and the tennis coach, and his wife was a coach too. Teach, they called her. And
What did you play?
I played basketball and tennis. And I was an okay basketball player, but I was a pretty good tennis player. And
Do you still play?
no,
No.
hit, limp, limp. But both my children played and were very successful. And I play golf now. Hit it and ride to the next shot.
There you go.
But
The ball's smaller, but
yeah, but he just taught us to be prepared, and your uniform is going to always be the same, and there's no excuse, and you don't forget your belt. And
how did it serve you as you went into your tire business, for example?
well, the boys would tell you, don't show up without a belt on because he'll send you home.
So
That's
the
the one
discipline
piece
and
of
the
uniform you
professionalism-
have to buy is a belt, and I expect you to wear that every day.
especially in this day and age, right?
Yeah, and you'd be
Of the droopy
surprised.
pants.
You'd be surprised how I used to only had to do that once, and it would be a ripple through. They'd see a kid coming, they go, "Oh, he's going to
He's
get
in trouble.
Watch this.
The one thing you could ask most people who know me well, I'm pretty consistent. My friends would say, I can tell you what he's going to say if this situation happens.
Well, the good part that I see about that is that when you set expectations and you're clear about setting expectations, you're much more likely to get them, for people to meet them, because it's a clear path to follow.
Yeah,
I see that as a sign of a good leader, is setting clear expectations.
Now that I used to get them on the first day, and here's your uniform, and here's your job, and I'm going to tell you this, and I mean it with all sincerity. The less that we talk, the better you're going to like it. Because that means you're doing your job. And I have guys who work for me for 25 years
Yeah.
under that same premise.
Like, I'm doing good. He hasn't talked to me in a week.
Yeah, it's pretty clear.
So, you have any comments for other leaders, upcoming leaders in the county, or in other parts of the country? What would you say is important as a leader?
I would give the same advice to them that my son is 31, and I tell him that he should get involved in a Rotary. He's working in Manhattan now, and he could belong to the Manhattan Rotary Club if he wanted to, and you want to meet some people, that's where you meet them.
Yeah.
The whole turn away from fraternal organizations to the me time is fine, except you're stunting your growth. And when you're 50, you're going to be very sorry that you did not spend that time, that one night a week, building relationships. And
Yeah, so you've been involved in Rotary for how long?
a long time.
I've
96,
Oh, good.
97?
So 20.
Yeah. Oh, not
Almost-
quite 20, I
not
think
quite,
15.
Yeah.
But
The logo didn't have spokes. It was just a round piece of rock.
they were still working on it. No, but that's just one, and it doesn't. To me, it doesn't matter whether it's Native
Rotary or-
Sons,
yeah.
the Chamber of Commerce. I think you need that outlet out in the public, or the community foundation, or just find something that you take your mind off of business, and you meet people. Because if you just go to work and go home, you have the same conversation with the same people every day.
That's true. It's very true. So, how is Jackson, and if so, how is Jackson different from the other parts of the county?
Well, it has all the grocery stores, or most of them, and most of the banks.
bigger ones.
Yeah. And it was a center of commerce since it started in 1854. And I think it still is. Losing the courthouse, at one time it really was, you couldn't find a seat at noon. Yeah. Losing the courthouse was a blow for the center of business there, but I still think that it is the center of commerce. Maybe not business, but commerce, how you define it.
That's a good way to put it. Well,
and I don't think that'll ever change.
Yeah. Well, that's great, and it's amazing how fast these segments go, but I appreciate your input, and hold on, please hold on, and we'll be right back with more insights on leadership in life. Welcome back to Insights on Leadership and Life. Tonight's topic is Community and Legacy, and I am your host, Roberta Pickett, Leadership and Life Coach. So this segment, we just heard from Pat Crew, our mayor of Jackson, and this segment we're going to talk to Rich Hoffman with the Rancheria. And so you had an interesting career getting up to CEO, and you said there's two different segments of the Rancheria. There's the casino part, and then there's the Indian.
Well,
The tribal side?
what a lot of people still don't understand is that the Rancheria is like an island in California, and all these
Yeah.
reservations
Yeah.
are sovereign entities.
yeah.
So with that comes the responsibility to provide your own governance, and the tribe has elected a government. When I first went to work there, and for 30 years it was chaired by Margaret Dalton, the matriarch of the family, and then her brother Bo took the helm for a while. Now Adam Dalton is the chairperson. So the tribe, like the city, elects a government of 5 people: chairman, vice chairman, secretary, treasurer, and 2 members at large, and they provide for a lot of the things that a city would. I mean, we have our own wastewater treatment. We build our own roads and maintain our own roads. We have housing that we build and take care of for the tribe. So those are all functions that any government would be involved in. So that's a piece. And then there's the enterprise side. The tribe is fortunate to own and operate, for the last 30 years or so, the casino and hotel.
Right.
And that's another animal, a commercial enterprise. And there are other commercial enterprises that the tribe owns, like the apartment complex in Sutter Hill, Pine Woods Apartments, some great real estate holdings here locally, and equities and other things, for the future of the next generation of the tribe. So Margaret was really conservative in terms of handling the resources of the tribe, and it's going to leave a lasting legacy.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about legacy in the next segment, but it is interesting because, most of us don't really think about how the Rancheria, in this instance, how it really is organized and how it really works. We just hear it, and most people think the casino, and that's as far as it goes.
Right.
So it's interesting.
And your own medical center you recently opened, I was invited to.
Yeah.
Very important.
That's
thing.
very important. Excuse me. So what drives you to be involved in the community? Because the Rancheria, so this is sort of a two-part, because I know you personally are very involved in many things, and of course the Rancheria is
Right.
too. They're a huge contributor and a huge benefactor for our community.
Well, I'm fortunate, and it goes back again to Margaret, who, you hear about these projects springing up in communities where suddenly a casino wants to get built, and there's dialogue about it, and people oppose it, and they're scared of this. Margaret raised her kids here. I mean, she raised her kids and her younger siblings here with nothing, and was part of this community and was a Cub Scout leader. And, the kids grew up here. They went to school here. This tribe is part of this community. Mm-hmm. So, she always had a great interest in how decisions she makes at the Rancheria affect the community, and reaching a hand out and saying, how can not let's write a check and get rid of the controversy, but how can we work together, roll our sleeves up, and work on a project together, and you contribute something, and you contribute your time or equipment. How do we solve a problem?
It's a really
and
collaboration.
That pays dividends.
Oh.
Writing checks doesn't build relationships. Trying to work together to solve a problem does.
Yeah, the writing the checks solves short-term things as far as I can
but it's not
see,
real.
but it's
It's not real.
exactly
Yeah.
it doesn't create long-term benefits. Yeah, necessarily. So you are involved in a lot of different things yourself. I mean, is it true you play in a band?
Yes. Well, my band plays really well, and they put up with this 3-chord cowboy. Yeah, but I'm fortunate to be able to play once in a while with some great, talented local musicians, and we just have blast and play old school, country music, the stuff that Patrick and I grew up listening to. Yeah, but it's just a blast, and it's a great release, and music has always been a part of my life, and art, and photography and all these things. So those are great pastimes. Yeah.
Well, but it sounds, well, I'll give an example. I know I'm part of the Amador Upcountry Rotary Club, and when a couple of years back, we actually went to the Rancheria for a music grant, and you guys were able to provide that for us and helped us out in the community. And what triggered, I could see, I mean, we were talking about it then, was your love for music and for kids having that opportunity to experience music in their lives. So what do you think that is about? What's the importance of music?
Unfortunately, I mean, when we were younger, people here in Amador County will remember Irv Gidding, who was instrumental in teaching all of the people here how to play an instrument. In 5th grade, I was at Pioneer School, and he recruited me to become a member of the band. And I played the sousaphone, which, if you're not familiar with, is the tuba, but wrapped around you so you can march with it. And I was the most unpopular kid on the bus. I can tell you that. That case where that thing's about as big as a VW bug. Yeah. But, it causes synapses to fire and makes connections in your brain that don't get made otherwise.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it's very important. And unfortunately, it's something that we've looked past in terms of importance at school. And a lot of these kids don't have the opportunity otherwise to make those connections. And they're important as part of, getting a well-rounded education.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we have, contributing to money through the schools for music programs. But we also have the Amador Student Music Fund, which is another way that kids can get music opportunities.
Yeah, so we just need to figure out a way to do it. And fortunately, the tribe, supports these youth activities. I personally, when my kids were in school and they were starting to lose funding for art and art teachers, I took a day a week, and they had a curriculum, and I taught art in the schools for a couple of years. So, there are solutions, but we just can't lose track of what the goal is.
Absolutely, and I think that you just pointed out there is, what can ordinary folks do to help out the community?
Well, part of the problem is, and Pat sees it too, I'm sure, is that as politics become more partisan and a zero-sum kind of game where you have people on the right and people on the left, I think we're fortunate here in Amador County that we're such a tight-knit community that regardless of your personal beliefs, you can't be anonymous, and you have to compromise to get things done in a pragmatic way, and to open yourself up to listening to everybody's opinion. And, we can agree, Pat and I can not agree about something, but we can still be friends at the end of that conversation. We don't have to choose sides.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that's important. I think that's what's
Absolutely.
different
We're
about
all in
Amador
this
County.
together.
Yeah.
We are.
We all want the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Because
We all
have
want
to
That
live
was a
with the
better way to
results
say it,
too.
yeah.
Yeah. So working together, collaboration you mentioned, compromising is another piece of that, and of community, and how at the end of the day we all have to, we all want the same thing, and we all have to live with the results that we accomplish together.
But I think as we get older too, I know personally, speaking for myself, I've told my kids recently, the older I get, the less certain I am about my position on things.
That's interesting.
And
I agree.
I've opened myself up to being more receptive to listening to other ideas.
Yeah.
And I love it. I think it's totally freeing.
One of the classes I took, this was years ago, but it talked about listening as an ally. So that if you can put yourself in the position, if I were an ally to that other person, how would I listen? I mean, you would be much more attentive. You would be listening to really the commentary rather than to coming up with your
Right. What am
rebuttal.
How am I going to respond to this? Right?
And I think that would really help us all if we could remember that when we're listening
Absolutely.
to others. The Rancheria is one of the largest, or it is the largest employer in the county. Do you see that that puts a responsibility on them, and if so, how?
I think it does, and I think the tribe takes it seriously. You know, I've been fortunate to work for a government and a business that really considers how the decisions they make affect people. Mm-hmm. And you know, we've gone through some tough economic times. We've had to go through reductions in force, and you know that's devastating for people. And we, you know, they're not just names on a sheet that you highlight.
They're your neighbor.
They're your neighbors, and they're people that you see at the grocery store, and you've got to be able to look these people in the eye and explain to them the situation that you're in. You owe that to them, and you owe it to them to be careful in other areas and not be wasteful, and to do everything you can to avoid that.
Absolutely. Yeah. If there is one thing, one word that you would say in terms of a lesson growing up, what would it be?
A lesson growing up. I think it's just, well, it's not one word, but okay. but you can have fun and get the job done.
I like it. Okay. Thank you, Rich. And we are going to take another commercial break and be right back for more on Insights on Leadership in Life. We'll be back in a minute. Thank you. Welcome back to Insights on Leadership in Life. This has been a topic tonight on community and legacy, and we haven't talked too much about legacy yet, more about community. But this segment, that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm here with Pat Crew and Rich Hoffman, and that's my first question is legacy. Or actually, before I ask a question, I think I'm going to tell you my favorite quotation about legacy, and that is, the life you leave, the legacy you leave is the life you lead. It's from Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner. I love that. To me, that really talks about, it's about the way you live your life and what you do. It's not just one thing you do.
And it doesn't have anything to do with how much money you made or the stuff you acquired. It's the people that you affected along the way.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what does it mean then to leave a legacy?
Well, I think we're all hardwired somehow to want to think about, I guess, how we'll be remembered when we're gone. When I think of legacy, I think of my children and how they're going to live their lives and pass along some of our shared ideals. So when I think of legacy, I think about what example I'm setting for my kids and how I treat people, and if I care about what I'm remembered for, it's that I was fair and honest and tried to impart in my kids the same sensibilities.
So that you actually modeled the way, or you lived your life by your values almost, it sounds like.
Yeah, and the people that I grew up around, everybody, Pat's a part of me, Jim Giannini and Volcano's a part of me, everybody in this county becomes a part of you.
Yeah.
And I think about we were talking earlier about Pat. I go in and get tires from Pat, and I'd say, give me this special Rich Hoffman discount, and Pat would say, yeah, absolutely. We never talked about what that was. Yeah, but I knew by the way that Pat conducted himself and the reputation that he built, he's not going to lose money on the deal, but he's not going to beat me up. Right. And he's going to give me good advice if he thinks that I should have a different type of tire on my car. He'll tell me, and I'll trust him. Mm-hmm. And I think that that doesn't happen automatically. No. You earn that.
That's
and
right.
That's part of Pat's legacy, but also becomes part of the way I try and conduct myself. And I think, if I'm in that situation, do I want people to feel about me the same way I felt about Pat? And I think that's important. And we all kind of feed off of each other that way.
And I think, again, what we said earlier about how we all, maybe it's a little different in a smaller community, but we have, because we know each other and because we're so much closer and you know your neighbor and you hear about things more, maybe we're more aware of it or conscious of it, but I think it contributes to it as well.
There's no way to be anonymous here.
Yeah.
No.
To conduct yourself anonymous.
There you go. Yeah.
Really.
Good or bad, they know you,
Right,
right?
right.
Yeah. What about you, Pat?
Well, I told you, Roberta,
Yeah.
that it was a challenge for me because I had never really,
Thought about it.
because I don't do it because I'm trying to build a legacy. But I got to thinking, and it hit me probably yesterday afternoon, and you both have touched on it and will agree. We all learn the Golden Rule and the 10 Commandments, and if you're in Boy Scouts, the Boy Scout Oath, or the 4-H and FFA. But to me, if my legacy would be, he got things done, and he used the rotary four-way test. 24 words.
for
Is
those-
it the truth?
Good.
Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Is it beneficial to all concerned? If you do that, you never have any
true.
problems.
It's so true.
So that would be
I love
my
that.
legacy.
I love that. I teach a class for the Franchise Tax Board on ethics and decision making, and I always use the four-way test as part of that class because
Well, Rich
it's
pretty well
so,
explained the four-way test
He
without saying
did.
it.
He gave a story
Yeah.
and explained it from that perspective. It's
Yeah,
great.
So,
So, what do you think? So, to me, legacy is, you've talked about it being sharing what's important to you, doing things right, not just doing it, but doing things right, and doing things in the right way as well. So, to me, those are parts of being a leader as well. And to me, it's not about a title of leader. It's really about, again, your life. In fact, I love quotes, and one of my other favorite quotes is, if they took away your title, would people still follow you?
No, that's an interesting concept. And I think, I think that you can certainly improve your leadership skills, but I do feel like there are people who are born leaders. And
Rich, you said some people are hardwired
Yeah.
to be leaders. And I have found that people, if you're a good leader, want to get in line and be led. They don't want to have to go out and be out in the front.
yeah,
They're
so you
perfectly
will-
happy, so there's 2 or 3
Sure.
different views of it.
But there are people, and Pat and I, if we go to whether it's the Fair Foundation or the Jackson or the County Chamber of Commerce meeting or the Jackson Revitalization Committee, or you pick the cause, right?
Right.
It comes down to seeing about the same 50 people.
I say
everywhere
40,
you go.
but it might be 50.
Maybe it's 40, maybe it's 50. But those people just naturally kind of congregate and they're involved.
I would
And-
agree with that. And I would also say there are so many people, though, who volunteer. And this community is just amazing for its volunteer efforts and how much they can, like you were saying, whatever cause it is, just there's always somebody there to join in. And to me, there's a part of them that is standing up and being a leader, too. It may not be in the same scope and may not be in charge kind of a leader, but
It's
there's
taking responsibility.
It's taking it, yes.
And part, Rich, what you said, I mean, our mentors in our lives were, I can remember Mel Gilman at 5 o'clock in the morning cooking breakfast, and I'd go to Sacramento, see a movie, and get home at 11 o'clock at night, and he's hosing off the parking lot.
Working
and Ned
hard.
Vukovic and Dan Vukolovich and Irv Gidding and Wes Hill, and they were stand-up guys, I call them, and we learned from that. So we didn't invent how to operate in Amador County. We're just continuing. Am I
we're-
saying that?
No,
Is that-
we are the product, because all those guys you mentioned were from the greatest generation. And we're just a product of being exposed to
Right.
them.
Well,
Yeah.
and hopefully we can live up to their greatest generation as well. What else about a legacy? I mean, do you think, what other legacies are there? Are there community legacies that you think?
Well, you
I
know.
mean, like the fair, isn't that sort of a
Yeah,
community
that would
legacy?
be what would come to mind for me, that keeping the fair going for my grandchildren would be a very important.
And what is the importance that the fair brings?
It's a family reunion.
Oh, I love that. That's
And I'll tell you my experience.
right
with
or
it. No,
wrong?
it is,
Yeah.
and I can count on going to the beer booth that's over by the Windmill Cafe.
Sit on the rocks for
And
7 hours
seeing-
and go home.
Seeing every guy that was my pal in high school every year,
Yeah.
and not the other beer booth, that
Right.
beer booth,
Yeah.
because
I know
it's
which
closer
one
to the
you're-
livestock bar.
I know which one
Yeah.
you're talking about.
So,
yeah.
but that's it for me. But I'll tell you some practical experience that I got out of the fair and being involved in agriculture and raising animals. I was, 13, 14 years old, and back then, when you raised an animal, you go to the Wells Fargo Bank and you take out a loan. And
for the feeding it,
livestock.
it's
Yeah,
huge.
so you take out a loan and you buy an animal, and you had to work out a budget and a plan that showed what you're going to spend on this animal, what it was going to cost to feed it, how much the potential, revenue, our return on investment would be.
Right.
You'd get a checkbook, and you'd manage that thing. And I was 13, 14 years old. I had a checkbook.
love
I was
that.
making budgets. I was putting together a plan, and
And
what
you
a
had to manage
foundation
your
to start
money.
with. You had
You
to
had to
manage it.
learn out how
Yeah.
to manage.
And there were consequences if you were wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, you had a loan to pay back.
Yeah.
So talk about the opportunity to get some real good practical life lessons early. That stuff just can't go away.
No.
Yeah.
Well, we've got to hold strong as a community to that legacy that we have for our children and grandchildren, yeah. There was one other quote that I came across today, and it was a Mother Teresa quote, but I thought it was interesting how it tied both community and legacy together. I thought, she said, "I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples." And I thought that was interesting, that we can't do it all as an individual, but we do have the opportunity to impact others, to affect how they live their lives, hopefully, or at least share our belief system with them. And what else do we have? How do we send ripples across
And
the
I'm
water?
sure from Rich's standpoint, how much they do for people, you have no idea how many people that auxiliary are helped by you doing one thing.
Yeah, there's a multiplicity of that to
Yeah.
everything we do, to everything we do, and to programs that you're involved with. They not only affect this small microcosm of things, but there's a
Yeah.
multiplicity.
You don't
that
know
rolls
how
through.
many people
It's
you're
true.
affecting.
But we're coming up to an end here, and I just want to say thank you again to both of you. You really are shining examples to me of human beings who care about community and about legacy and who are contributing to it. And thank you again for your being on leadership, Insights on Leadership in Life. Thank you.